Hey, this is Ewan Blakey, and with Christy, my wife, we're the pastors of Oasis Church, and this is our podcast. I wanted to thank you for joining us today. I hope this inspires you. I hope it builds your faith. I hope it gives you perspective to see God is moving in your life. Enjoy the message.
I'm launching the new series for the next couple of weeks called Courageous Communities. What does it mean to be part of the Courageous Community? What does it mean? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for this place? To be part of a courageous community. Well, let's break it down. You can be part of a community, any community really, interest groups, Zumba classes, F45, knitting. There's a couple of prerequisites. Prerequisites are, firstly, you've got to be able to breathe, and then you just turn up. And then you're part of the community. But then what does it mean again for us to be part of a courageous community? Sounds like there's a bit more work to be done for ourselves do we put our undies outside our pants and put a cape on, stand on top of the building and be like, I'm part of a courageous community. See, sir. That doesn't require that. I don't know. Is there a difference between courageous and bravery? Got a couple of meanings here for bravery. What does bravery mean? Bravery, I'll just read from the screen if that's all right. Bravery is instinctive, often comes from a lack of fear or hesitation in the face of danger. It's about taking action without necessarily considering the risks. So we hear about this in the news sometimes when a parent's walking with a child at the shops or whatever on a footpath, and then the parent's looking away, looking at the shops, and then the child walks onto the road. And then out of act of bravery, there's a passerby. Doesn't really calculate the risks. Doesn't do like a volume times area times speed it just knows that there's a child on the road, there's a vehicle coming. So the act of bravery, someone just goes in there without even thinking and saves the child. Sometimes they save the child and everyone's okay, but sometimes the child's saved and then something happens to the person. But it's the act of bravery, something you just go straight into. It's bravery. So what does it mean to be courageous? Courage. It involves facing fears, recognizing the risks, and still choosing to act despite them. It requires a bit more thought and emotional resilience. Now think about a firefighter. Firefighter is just about to go into a building, save a family, save one person, two people. They consider the risks, but they're prepared. They've done training. They don't just go in plain clothes, or they go with the right equipment. They consider the risks, knowing what can happen, but they're ready for the task. So a courageous community is someone who does these things. Someone who does the work, and it requires a little bit of consistency, because a fireman can't just be brave once off. A fireman doesn't plan when the next fire is. It's just, it happens, they get a call and they got to go there. Sometimes it's a small one, sometimes it's a big one. But they're prepared. So being part of a courageous community means we've got to do some work for ourselves. We've got to do some things behind closed doors to be courageous in our own life first. You don't just come to the door and then we're in a courageous community. It doesn't happen like that. It actually starts with us facing fears, considering the risks, doing training, learning how to deal with these risks, learning how to deal with ourselves, issues that we have in ourselves. And it requires a bit more thought. We can't just jump in there. A bit of emotional resilience. So being part of courageous communities is that itself. My topic for this morning, for us to be part of a courageous community, is forgiveness and or unforgiveness. Forgiveness sometimes feels like a dirty word. For those of you that know Sean Paul says date. So sometimes forgiveness can be a date word. As you're part of our, sorry, I'm going back to my. But sometimes it feels like a dirty word, and we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to deal with things like that. And the kind of forgiveness I'm talking about today is not about like at the shops when I'm at gateways. Someone cuts me off on the road, and I just want to do a little pit maneuver and ram them off the road. I'm sure, Ben, you've done a few pit maneuvers in yours. I was at Costco the other day, lining up at Costco. My basket wasn't full. I was just lining up, just minding my own business. And then there was a family with their basket. You know how big those trolleys are at Costco. Full, and they were trying to cut into mine. I was like, well, hey, nah. I'm not talking about that type of forgiveness. I'm actually talking about the hurt and the pain that we've gone through and we've held on to unforgiveness. Yeah. And how does it affect us? All through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, forgiveness is woven into the Word, woven inside of stories. And we heard last week, Pastor Craig talking about the mercy. Oh man, that far out. That one really, really got me. The mercy and the mercy seat and forgiveness, peace and love. It's all woven into the Word. Yeah. Forgiveness is woven into the Word, and sometimes, like I said, it's a dirty word, and we don't want to deal with it. But the one person I want to talk about today is Jesus. How did he say in Luke 23, verse 34, how did he say, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing, after the fact? So if you want to turn to your Bibles to Luke 23. Have I got on the screen? Yeah, sweet. I'm just going to read this through. So think about this, right? Before I read the scripture, how did Jesus say later in 23, verse 34, how did he say, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do, after the fact, right? Listen to this. In Luke chapter 22, verse 1, now the feast of the unleavened bread, called the Passover, was approaching, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12, and Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. How did Jesus say, Father, forgive them after that? Let's go to same chapter in verse 54. Then seizing him, so this is when Jesus has been seized. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him to a house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance, but when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard, they sat down together. Peter sat down with them. A servant girl, saw him seated there and in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This is the man that was with him." "Woman, I don't know what you're talking about." A little later, someone else sees him. "Weren't you one of them?" Peter replied, "Man, you don't know me. I don't know him." About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this is the fellow that was with him, for he is a Galilean." Peter replied, "Mate," oh, he didn't say mate. I said mate. "Mate, I don't know what you're talking about." And just as he was speaking, the rooster crows. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. And then Peter remembered the words of the Lord. Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. One of his disciples sells him out. Another disciple disowns him. Then later on in the verse, you need to go and read what happened. He gets mocked. He gets beaten. They blindfold Jesus. And they play a game. They hit him. "Hey, who hit you? Prophesy." They tore his beard. They spat on him. In same chapter in verse 65, and they said many other insulting things to him. And the list goes on. How the heck did Jesus say, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing"? How the heck did he do that? We find it hard to forgive sometimes. Unlike Jesus didn't do these next things I want to say. Unlike Jesus, we find it hard to forgive because we idolize or we demonize people. We idolize them in the fact that when someone hurts us, we put them at this pedestal. They should not have done that. How could they have done that to me? They know better. They were my pastor. They were my leader. They were my father. They were my mother. They were my relative. And we hold him to this level where only God can be held to. God is the only one that says he will never leave us nor forsake us. Yeah. And that's the level that he needs to be. That's where God should be. But we find it hard to forgive because we put people who's hurt us at this level. We idolize them. They should never have been there because they're human. Yeah. The other thing Jesus didn't do, but we do, we find it hard to forgive because we demonize. We only look at that person for that one single act of evil that they committed to us. And that's how we view them. And that's how we deal with them. And that's how we look without the eyes of grace or without the eyes with forgiveness or love. That's what they are, that act. We idolize or we demonize. We find it hard to forgive because that's hard. I love you, right? And you love me too, hopefully. If you don't know me, you love me. Hopefully you love me. But I'm going to say things to you that you might not like, and I might offend you, and please don't idolize me, and please don't demonize me. Pastor Chrissy and Pastor Yui, we love them, but they are human also. And we can't hold them to a place that they never should have been in our life. Only God can be at that position. But for some reason, we have these two things. We idolize and we demonize. I got up there. We find it hard sometimes. We find it hard and sometimes impossible to forgive because we idolize and we demonize and fail to humanize the person. We find it hard. And like I said before, bravery is a once-off action, right? Where courage, it requires us to continue not idolizing people and not demonizing people. It's some work we've got to do. It requires a little bit of consistency. It requires more work that we've got to do outside of just here and listening to a message. So that's number one. We need Jesus to be like Jesus, right? Yeah or no? One of my words for this year is Artos Zoe, which is one of God's names. And it means bread of life. That's one of my words for the year. But I've got a few other slogans or little one-liners that I have. Trying to live by. One of the lines is, one of my slogans, I don't know I've never actually called it a slogan. I don't know what anyway, it's a line that I've just put down one of them is to be like Jesus and to be like people who are trying to be like Jesus. And that's why I love this place. That's why I love coming here because I see a whole bunch of us in the same boat as me. Yeah. Just trying to be like Jesus and I'm trying to surround myself with people who are trying to be like Jesus. But I want to say something. Might ruffle your feathers a little bit. We don't need Jesus to forgive. We don't need Jesus to forgive. You see, forgiveness is a tool. It's a choice that we make. I've got a lot of blank faces. You don't believe me? All right, let's go to the Bible. Mark 5. Mark 5. I think I got up there. Yeah, Mark 5:24. Let's just read from here. It's the story of the woman with the issue of blood. So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she had heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. So we see this story. Jesus in Capernaum, he's doing what Jesus does. Crowds following him. But she was only free. And this one link it back to you, right? You don't need Jesus. If you have hurt or unforgiveness of your heart, you don't actually need Jesus to forgive that person. Because the power is in your hands. The power of your freedom is in your hands where you sit right now. Yeah. And so what happened with this lady? The power of her freedom and her healing was in verse 28. Because she thought. She had spent 12 years in suffering. 12 years of being an outcast. 12 years of being sick. 12 years of being weak. She had 12 years of seeing doctor after doctor after doctor and getting negative report after negative report after negative report. She's like, I don't know what else to do. She's spent all her money. She's got nothing left to do. Then Jesus comes to Capernaum, her hometown. Jesus comes to Capernaum. Jesus wasn't there in Capernaum to see her. In this moment, Jesus was actually walking away from the lady. In verse 28, was it 28? Verse 28, as she saw Jesus walk past her, she had to make a conscious decision. She had to make a decision right then on the spot. If I'm going to be healed, I need to get myself up and get to Jesus. So because she thought, if I could just touch his clothes. So she had to do a bit of work. She had to get up. There was still a large crowd. So just because she stood up, she wasn't going to get healed. She still had to walk towards Jesus. Jesus was walking away with the crowd, right? So she's at the back. And then she walks through. Whole crowd bunched together. So she's doing anything she can do to get to Jesus. She's walking through. She trips over. She's getting on her hands and feet. And she's climbing straight through because she knows she had a thought that she wants to be free. She wants to be healed. So she's striving herself. She's going, if I can just touch these clothes. So it gets to a point, she can't even touch the whole cloth. She only can just get the corner of it. It's like a movie, you know? Dun, 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 dun. And she gets through, she's in amongst the mud, she's in amongst the feet. But because she thought that she can get healed, she had to make a move and make a choice. So she touched the hem of the garment. We know the rest of the story for those of you. She gets healed. In the same way, forgiveness is a choice that you have to make. If you have hurt, if you have this weight, it's got to be a choice that you make. We don't need Jesus to forgive because it's our choice. But then when we do choose to forgive, we need to show courage. It's got to be on and on, right? That's when we need Jesus to constantly show courage, facing that fear, dealing with it. We've conquered it, and then face that fear, deal with it. Face that fear, deal with it. Face that fear. That's when you need Jesus. But when the initial time to forgive, that's a choice you make. And unforgiveness is also a choice. In 2020, at my last church, I was sitting in one of the services, and they had a preacher from South Africa up the box. And, sorry, excuse me. And he was preaching, and I was, I've done this the wrong way around. Just forgive me. This is actually running smoother than the first service. So you're oh, who did this? I think I did. So in this service, he was preaching, and he was talking about our heart, right? Our heart it's like a house. It has different rooms. And in your heart, and he was talking, and I was like, sitting there. In your heart, you have different rooms. And in my house, and he was saying this, in our heart, all of our hurt and pain and things that we go through, when we let God into our heart, we put all that stuff that we don't want God to see in this little room. Tuck it all the way in the back there. So as he was preaching, he was saying this. He was saying that there's things in your heart that, and then as I was sitting there, I was just going, I think he's talking to me. And as he was talking, I started, this is a different story, but I started tasting alcohol in my mouth. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't drunk, but I started tasting alcohol, and that day I actually got delivered from, I wasn't an alcoholic or anything like that, but I did use alcohol to mask some of the things that I had. That's not for today. But this one particular morning, he was saying, I've got there's different things in your heart. And then as I responded to the altar call, I realized that the Holy Spirit kind of led me to look down at my wrists, or at my hands and at my feet. Because when I looked down at my hands and my feet, I realized that I had unforgiveness. I realized I had unforgiveness in my heart, and it was affecting my walk. I'm still walking, I'm still moving, but it's affecting how free I should be walking. So when I looked down that morning, I was like, sheesh, I thought I was doing all right. I thought I dealt with it. I was still moving. I could still move. I feel like I was on the path that God had called me to, so I feel like I was on the same path. So it affected my walk. But then I saw my hands were from my own unforgiveness, my hands were tired, which affected my worship. So my feet were affected from my walk, and my hands were affected from my worship. So I was still lifting my hands. Worship leaders will say, open your hands. We can open it. Yes, my hands are open. But is this free? So I looked down. I was like, far out. I did not realize this was affecting my walk. And this was affecting my worship. Because at the time, I was moving. I thought I was good. But then I had to make a choice. I had to go into my back pocket and grab forgiveness. Forgiveness is a tool. Forgiveness is a choice. I had to grab it. And that the cable ties that I put myself on, Jesus didn't do that, the devil didn't do that. I put these ties on myself. I looked at it and was like, fire out, you're right. It was a little bit awkward, but it was a bit of work I had to do. So that morning, I cut a tie off. Because I was going through something at that time. That was 2020, probably the last, maybe from 2015. I was going through something that I held unforgiveness. I was still going to church. I was actually still worshiping too. Crazy, man. And I thought I was all right, because I was still going to church, and I knew God was God, but it was affecting how free I should worship. It was affecting how I should be walking. I shouldn't be walking like this. I should be walking free. We should be walking free. We should be worshiping free. But we put things around ourselves. It's not the devil. It's hurt that we put on ourselves. And it affected me. And I didn't know. So I cut that tie off. And I forgave that person at the altar. I didn't catch up for coffee. I didn't DM him. I didn't go on Instagram. I didn't go on Messenger. I did my work right there at the altar. I did my work right there. Once I cut that one off, I said the person's name and I forgave the person. I really felt I was like a light weight had come upon me. Then I realized again, the Holy Spirit made me look again. So I looked again, and I still had a tie there on both my hands and feet from this unforgiveness I carried from 11 years before that. I know. So I said, oh, fire out. I didn't know God. Sorry, Holy Spirit. And he showed me. He goes, from that moment, you can carry on or not. I have to make a decision. And that decision lies with you. It lies with me. Not just one act of bravery, but continually facing our fear and continually doing things to make sure that we're not bound. So I looked at it, I was like, far out. I didn't know God. So at that time, at that altar that day in 2020, can't remember the date, I think it was early in the year. I was there for 11 years. I didn't even know. And since then, right, I'll tell you no word of a lie. Since then, I'm walking at a normal pace, but it feels like I'm running. It feels like that I'm sprinting because I was bound. I didn't know. And when I worship, my hands are open. My arms are free. I was worshiping like this before, but now when I worship, I'm free. Because I didn't know. I thought this was normal. I should live my life like this. We're not meant to live life like this. We're not meant to worship like this. We're meant to walk. We're meant to walk with freedom. We're meant to walk and we know that what Jesus called us to do, we're meant to walk in this freedom. So now, if you can replay what we did this went wrong the first service. But now, what happens is, because I'm free, right? Because we've done the work and we're free, I can walk now. And then people can say things to me. But I'm not going to grab it and tie myself up. This is where you need Jesus. Throw some more. Throw some more at me. Throw some more at me. Throw it all at me. Throw the whole thing at me. This is how you're meant to live. This is how I'm meant to live. This is how I'm meant to live. You don't need Jesus to forgive that moment. But you do need Jesus when people do throw words, insulting words. And when Jesus was on the cross, his hands were nailed, his feet were nailed, but he wasn't cable tied. He wasn't cable tied. And this morning, maybe you need to get into your back pocket and get your choice out. Your tool for your freedom. Freedom in walking. Freedom in worship. Forgiveness isn't about letting that person off the hook. That's not what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness is a choice for yourself to set yourself free. Once you're free, then you need God's help for when things happen. And that's how Jesus could have said, that's how Jesus could have said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. Even though the insults were getting hurled, even though uppercut, after beard being torn, after they made this crown out of thorn and they rammed it down his head. He could only say, Father, forgive them, because his hands weren't tied, because his feet wasn't tied. And this morning, that's the call for you, to look at your hands, look at your feet. Maybe you feel like you've been walking, but using your spiritual eyes, have a look. Are you being restricted? Is your worship being restricted? You're right. You're right. They were wrong. They should have said that. You're right. They shouldn't have hurt you like that. Sometimes we wait for God to cut our cable ties off. But that's not for God to do. Jesus did that work himself. Jesus did that work himself, and we're trying to be like Jesus. So the tool is in your hands. Sometimes we just wait for God. God, and we get frustrated. Why haven't you done this yet? Can I tell you the truth? Can I be honest? While we wait for God, he also waits for us to take a hold of our emotion and to forgive others. And that's how we can set ourselves free. It's a choice we make. We keep this so deep in our pocket, because we all get given this choice. And we keep it in a cargo. If you've got cargo pants, just put it in the pocket where you want to find it. But this morning, I want you to have a look at your choice of forgiveness. Maybe it's time to grab it. And have a look at your hands, have a look at your feet.